In just the past 4 years, the issue of how to manage and preserve academic and government-sponsored research data has catapulted from a complete obscurity to become a significant concern in higher education, the research professions, and of course, academic librarianship. The reasons for this sudden interest in saving researchers' data originate from very different academic and social movements. First, in the past 10 years, researchers have begun to develop more programmatic and collaborative methods of working together. There has also been a dawning interest in repurposing research data to perform meta-research studies. Second, there has been a growing political pressure on the federal government to be more transparent about how research grant money is spent. And finally, there have been growing concerns within the academic community about the trustworthiness of research data. Traditionally, academic research that is published in scholarly journals is peer-reviewed to ensure that a researcher's methods and conclusions are sound. However, examination of the research data behind a study is not always part of the peer review process. After several public and very embarrassing reports about famous researchers who manipulated or even faked research data, the research community and scholarly publishers have realized that data integrability and reproducibility of a study are necessary parts of comprehensive peer review. So in this lecture, we're going to look at some of the major features and issues in the field of research data management. Welcome back once again to OILS 513, Digital Information Management. Our topic for today is research data management. While there are a number of large integrated research projects in the United States and overseas, like say the Human Genome Project or one of the International Particle Super Collider programs, the majority of research in the arts, sciences, and other professions is accomplished mainly by individuals or small teams of researchers who produce generally small-scale research studies. Many university faculty members have had only informal and essentially vocational training in data and information management. And in fact, even many new research faculty members, while being more comfortable with electronic data and computer-assisted research, have only a passing familiarity with data management techniques. Thus, it is easy to see that we are living through a major transformational period in the history of the sciences and social sciences. And information management professionals have at present an opportunity to contribute to the development of data-intensive research techniques and scientific data management practices of the future. So the first reason to use systematic methods for managing research data is that data is a valuable commodity, just like money. Research studies, whether in the sciences or social sciences, cost a good deal of money to undertake. And if the collected data from these studies isn't preserved, often the research effort is ultimately wasted. Other reasons to manage research data include peer review to ensure research results can be reproduced, and public transparency in the spending of federal funds for research. We'll talk more about each of these issues shortly. A key issue in research data management is the reproducibility of data. If you recall, a few years ago, a team of Italian scientists claimed to have attained cold fusion in their laboratory. However, other independent scientists attempted to replicate the research and found they were not able to attain the claimed results. The article in this slide shows a very sad side to the data trust issue. This Dutch psychologist falsified data and findings for dozens of published research papers. Unfortunately, the field of psychology has been plagued recently by a series of faked studies that have hurt the field's overall credibility. Also, if you visit the National Science Foundation website, the agency actually has a Hall of Shame page listing names of researchers who received NSF research grants but either faked results or did not provide reproducible data sets or research plans. So peer review of both scholarly publications and the research methods and data sets underlying the research efforts are important aspects of academic scholarship. In this slide, you'll see the open data requirement for any scientists who publish in the esteemed journal Nature. Obviously, the editors at Nature have decided that the reputation of their journal depends at least in part on the integrity of their authors' research data. I remember as a boy seeing illustrations of what life would be like in the 21st century. With every home would have a flying automobile in the driveway and a personal robot to greet you at the door when you came home from work. While it's been disappointment on the first two counts here, however, we are living in a truly interesting time in terms of the advancement of computer software and information systems. Today, there is a whole landscape full of specialized software applications available to support any type of research: qualitative, quantitative, experimental, social, etc. Each of these applications have unique individual characteristics and management requirements. For example, many social researchers use the application called Atlas TI, which is a multifunction qualitative research package. Atlas TI generates many different types of data, and it has many different types of setup and configuration files that a researcher needs to save in order to be able to reconstitute his data analysis work at a later time. Complex software applications that produce complex data sets are one of the major challenges in research data management. For those of you who would like to get a better introduction to specific types of research analysis software that are available, I regularly give a workshop on software applications for data analysis through the UNM Graduate Resource Center. I've included a link to a video recording of this workshop in the Learning module page. In one of our previous learning modules, we looked at a variety of different kinds of information life cycles. This slide above shows one of the most popular versions of the research data life cycle. If you Google the phrase research data life cycle, most of the results that come up will closely resemble this diagram, but there will be minor differences between them based on the research discipline that the author of the diagram comes from and the research discipline that they are attempting to describe with the life cycle. The first phase in the data life cycle involves creating or collecting data. This could be accomplished through the administration of personal interviews for social research projects, through experimental processing, or through the collection of raw data from observation or data sensors. Once a scientist has collected the raw data for the research project, there is almost always some data processing and quality assurance work that needs to be performed to ensure the quality of the data and to transform it into a format that can be ingested into a research software application. Like Atlas TI, for example, for qualitative social research, or SAS or MATLAB for quantitative or numerical research. While the following step involves preserving the data, it is important to note that the research data in any study needs to be preserved at each stage from creation until final analysis. It is important to save a copy of the raw, unprocessed data that's collected initially, the quality assurance processed data with corrections or adjustments, the ingested data that's used for analysis, and so on. Each copy ensures that if a mistake is made that corrupts the data during the research process, the researcher can fall back to an earlier copy that hasn't been ruined. Once a research project is concluded, the data needs to be archived for safekeeping, and it also needs to be published on a repository server, which we'll discuss in more detail shortly. As previously mentioned, contemporary researchers need a variety of software and data management skills. This is where we, as information managers, can be of assistance, offering guidance on data management best practices and even software and hardware selection. Here, for example, is a job posting for a climate scientist position with the DataOne data repository project. DataOne is an international data repository that houses climate and environmental data sets from around the world. DataOne is also headquartered here at the University of New Mexico. But this position description clearly indicates in red that researchers in this, as well as nearly any other research field, are nowadays required to have highly specialized software skills and experience. Now let's talk about data management planning. Data management plans are documents that serve as the blueprint for how a researcher intends to preserve their data and make it accessible to their peers and the public. A data management plan is a formal document that is part of almost every contemporary research project, particularly if the researcher intends to get government or sometimes even private funding to support their research. The likelihood that they will need to prepare and submit a data management plan, or DMP as it is called, is pretty high. The National Science Foundation, National Institutes for Health, Centers for Disease Control, U.S. Geological Survey, Environmental Protection Agency, and even the National Endowment for the Humanities all require their grant applicants to submit a DMP in order to be considered for funding. Each agency has its own DMP or data management plan standards and requirements. Some agencies only require a 2-page DMP to go with a grant applicant's application, while plans for other agencies may run between 10 and 60 pages long. Fortunately, there are several online tools that can help data managers and researchers construct data management plans that meet specific agency requirements. In the United States, we have the DMP tool that is available on the web at dmptool.org. This is a collaborative project among many universities, including the University of New Mexico. You'll get to use this DMP tool in your assignment for this module. Now, it's interesting that because DMP requirements vary greatly between different countries, that almost every country has their own version of this DMP tool. So you can actually go find a British DMP tool online through the Joint Information Sciences Committee, or JISC, in London. Now let's move on to the next section of the lecture. And I'd like to quickly introduce you to some of the important concepts in research data management that will help you as you begin to formulate what you will include in your data management plan assignments. Data curation and preservation are very jargon-esque terms that aren't really used outside of the field of librarianship. Data curation is simply the process of ensuring that data produced during a research project is formatted in such a way that other researchers will be able to access and use it easily, either for peer review or for inclusion in some other type of research. And certainly preservation is simply the practice of ensuring the longevity of a data set after the research project is concluded. preservation of any digital content is extremely difficult to ensure because of the volatile nature of the storage media technology that is currently available. There are several steps to curating a research data set. First, the data needs to be examined to ensure it is formatted and stored correctly. For example, if your data set is saved in an Excel spreadsheet, one needs to examine it to make sure there aren't any merged cells or columns that are out of sync with each other. If one is working with human subjects data, you would need to go further and also de-identify that data set to remove any information that could enable someone to identify the subject's names or places of residence and other personal information. This can be an extremely involved process that includes creating code books and blind data sets. Next, the data needs to be saved into a file format that is openly accessible to other researchers. In this case, Microsoft Excel and XLSX format spreadsheet is generally fine for data storage and publishing because it's an almost universally used standard type of document format. However, if we were thinking about preserving our data set for many years to come, we would consider converting it into a plain text CSV or comma-separated columns file, which would be a better answer to ensure that the data is in a generic form that's easily accessible for years to come. Digital preservation is a field that is still in its infancy. It's kind of sad to realize that when working with digital data storage of any sort, technology, physics, and nature itself are really working against the idea of long-term digital storage of content. As you can probably attest, CD and DVD discs may last a few years, maybe they'll last up to 10 years, and maybe more, but nobody really knows for sure since the disk technology hasn't been around for that long. Portable hard drives and flash drives tend to fail after just a couple of years, so any digital preservation strategy has to take into account the need to move data from aging storage media to new media on a routine basis, say on average every 5 years. One can easily see how trying to copy a huge multi-terabyte collection of digital data from one set of disks to another every 5 years quickly becomes a huge and probably unmanageable task. In these cases, we need to look at automated archiving systems to help us manage large collections of data. In addition to copying data at regular intervals, it is important to keep multiple copies of data in several different physical and virtual locations. Disaster recovery backups on tape or disk can also aid in preservation efforts. Finally, there's a great deal of technical information about the digital files that are being archived that needs to be recorded when a data set is prepared for preservation. For example, it is a very good practice to record a checksum for every archived data file. A checksum is a data verification tool that can be used to ensure that we can tell if a file becomes corrupted over time. One should also record the organization of the data files that you are archiving, the file sizes, the original file names, and other low-level information that can help manage the data archives over the long term. Let's talk now about publishing data sets. After data curation and preservation work is done, the final step in complying with federal open data requirements is usually to publish the research data on a publicly accessible repository service so that other researchers, students, and the public can view and reuse the data in other research. There are currently two main types of repository services available to the researcher who wishes to publish their data. The first is a local university-sponsored repository. These are called institutional repositories. Pretty much every sizable research university maintains a local institutional repository. This slide shows the UNM institutional repository, which is called LoboVault, and can be found on the web at the URL repository.unm.edu. The slide also shows an actual published data set from a research project by Doctors Vigil and Bills in the linguistics department. If you wish to publish your own research or data on LoboVault, simply visit the LoboVault website for contact information. One of the LoboVault librarians can assist you with publishing your online project. The other type of data repository service is called a domain repository. Domain repositories are large, multi-institutional projects that are usually focused on archiving and publishing data from a specific research discipline or several very closely related disciplines. DataOne, as previously mentioned, is a domain repository that publishes environmental science and ecological data sets. Another well-known domain repository is the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Science Research, or more commonly known as ICPSR. As the name suggests, the focus of this repository is social science data. In addition, there are many other domain repositories that serve the research community. Dryad, for example, that's DRYAD, is a biological data repository. Researchers benefit from publishing their data sets in multiple repositories, both to aid in long-term preservation of their data, but also to provide access to different types of research audiences. Local institutional repositories are important for serving the needs of their parent institution and the local research community, while domain repositories serve the entire research community for a specific discipline. Let's finish up by talking about your Module 5 assignment, which is to write a data management plan. Now, what I'd like you to do, and there's detailed instructions on the Learning Module page, but I'd like you to either select a piece of research you've done yourself, where you collected data and did analysis on the data, or you can search the electronic journals databases of the UNM libraries to find and select a piece of research that you want to write a data management plan for. I have links to sample data management plans for sciences, social sciences, and humanities research projects on the Learning Module page. And you will need to go sign up for a free UNM affiliated account on the dmptool.org website. That gives you access to the DMP wizards that will walk you through the process of writing your data management plan. After you sign on to the DMP tool, you'll be asked to select a major funding agency and probably also a funding program for your data management plan. The DMP tool does this because even within a single agency like the NSF, National Science Foundation, different funding programs and different directorates within the NSF often have very different requirements for their data management plans. The DMP tool is aware of these differences and will help walk you through them. Now, for our purposes, I'm not looking for you to pick a specific research program or type of funding project. It will be enough just to find a close, a relatively close match between the research that you are using as your source material for your data management plan and the funding initiative that's offered through one of the agencies. If they don't exactly match up, don't worry about it. The exercise is mainly to learn about the different components required in writing a data management plan. There are 2 assignment drop boxes on the Learning Module webpage. One is for your research article to go into, and the other one is for your data management plan.